Okay, I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Let me know if you can hear and see me, and Merry Christmas. It is Friday, and it's also Christmas Eve, so of course what we do is SerenityOS Office Hours, Christmas edition. So I'm going to take this as a sign of life here from Brian. And yes, welcome everybody. It's office hours, and we're gonna do what we always do and talk about Serenity OS. And if people have questions about Serenity, now is a great time. Technical, non-technical, it's all good. Just feel free to ask anything, and we'll dig into it. Yeah, lovely to see so many people here. Very, very nice. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good Christmas. Let's see. So we have a question from Waffle GD asking how to compile Serenity OS. That, I don't know if anybody's ever asked that on office hours, actually. But to compile the system, your best bet is to read the build instructions, which are available in the repository under documentation, build instructions right here. And these will take you through the process. It is pretty simple. Thousands of people have succeeded, so I'm confident that you will succeed as well. Let's see. Simon is asking, I know your opinion about porting apps from Unix to Serenity, but what about porting from Serenity to Unix? What about it? That is certainly something you can do if you want to. A lot of the Serenity applications are written like on top of Serenity libraries, right? So you do kind of have to bring those libraries along if you want to say that you wanted to run the Serenity browser on a different system, for example, you would have to also port our graphics libraries, networking stuff, and so on. Or alternatively provide a different backend for those layers. But my opinion about porting Serenity software to Unix is you can do that if you want. I'm not personally super interested, but it's certainly doable. Let's see. TB Potten says, I heard you talking about refactors last week. Will there be videos about those? Interested to see how you tackle them. So yeah, last week I was spending a whole bunch of time, many days, on browser engine refactors, and I kind of hit a wall with those, and I ran into trouble with some construction order stuff, and I kind of set it aside to let it stew in the back of my mind and then work on something else, and then I'll pick that branch up later. I have not been recording it because it's been like really long and repetitive work. Just like, now I'm going to do this identical transformation to 40 different classes, and it's not super interesting to watch, and it's also like complicated enough that I can't just like speak freely while doing it without risking screwing something up. So it's kind of like not video friendly. But once I get that thing working, I will probably make a more like an architecture video describing how the new system works, because I would like to, explain to people how the design would work. Let's see. Not normally able to join this from, oh my goodness. This is a name I'm not sure how to pronounce. How do you pronounce this? Pronounce. Rory. All right. Well, Rory, not normally able to join this. Merry Christmas all. Merry Christmas to you too. And thank you for coming here. Let's see. Mateo says, I'm mainly a front-end developer. How do you think I should go about learning C++? There are a million different ways to learn C++. In my opinion, the best way is probably just to do some little tutorial or basic lessons if you're starting from nothing. If you are experienced with other languages, as you say, you're a front-end developer, so you do have like a programming mindset already, you could probably start by targeting a small project. Like a personal favorite of mine is to build emulators. So building a Game Boy or NES emulator can be a great way to learn a new language. But it all depends on what you're interested in, what your experience level is, and so on. The one thing to know about learning a new language like C++ is that it's kind of hard to screw it up, really. The important thing is to just do a bunch of coding. As long as you do a bunch of programming, you're going to learn. And it doesn't really help too much to obsess about, like, am I learning the perfectly optimal way, right? Just do stuff. Let's see. Joropo says, I believe you made a series of videos showing the outlines of a boot to graphics showing up. Would you mind updating it since there is a pre-boot environment now? I mean, sure, we could definitely do a new video from like boot to graphics, because there is a whole bunch of things that have changed since then. Like you mentioned the pre-kernel environment, but we also have now we have two different architectures, x86 and x86-64, and we also have stuff like multi-core support, and it would probably be good to show how those things work and get started. And also, like, I would also like to do a new overview of like the memory manager and how physical memory is allocated, stuff like that. Brian says, I am looking like a Razer keyboard. That's right. And check this out. It even has different modes. So you can set it to all kinds of obnoxious settings. But let's leave it on the static. So let's see. Dead Marshall says, Christmas time is a good time to use Holy See. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Holy See is it's a cute little gimmick language, but I wouldn't want to spend too much time in it if I have ambitions about actually building something. and definitely not if I want to build something with other people. But it's cute, you know. Let's see. Diego says, I would love to have a port of the web browser to Linux. Yeah, many people say that they would like to see that. And to those people, I say, you can totally do that. And I would encourage you to attempt it, because if you come at that with desire to see it through, you can totally do it. And we'll help you if you, it just requires somebody to care enough about it to start pulling the weight. And, you know, I try to be honest and transparent, and I just say I don't really care about that, but I'm certainly available to help somebody who does care. Hello, Elise. Nice to see you here. Merry Christmas, everyone. Indeed. Pius says, I really enjoyed the Natalie video, especially from the point of view of getting into a new project and being immediately productive. Will be fun to watch you contribute to Haiku someday. I'm glad you enjoyed that. It was certainly a bit of an unusual approach to contributing to a new project, but it's one that I have taken many times in the past. So I'm glad that it was interesting to so many people. And we'll see if we hack on Haiku someday. I don't really feel like I understand what they are trying to do with that project so well, but I probably would get a better understanding if I actually try to immerse myself a little bit. But we'll see. Let's see. Dontatus says, after watching your last optimization video, I was wondering how much of Serenity's performance is hindered by the fact that it is virtualized. Do you know how much faster it would be to run on bare metal? That is a good question. I don't know that. But I did I accidentally did some testing yesterday where I discovered that if you run without a GUI, we are already significantly faster. So I was testing the JavaScript test suite, and normally it runs in like 6 seconds on my machine, but if I run it completely standalone with no GUI up, it ran in less than 5 seconds. So quite a substantial, there's quite a substantial hit just from having the GUI up. And I think we need to investigate what that is, because I have some ideas of what it might be, but until we actually quantify, it will be hard to know where we can improve that. But yeah, so like if you go down to bare metal, it's definitely possible that we could be faster, but there's also a chance that we could be slower, because at the moment our physical drive access layer, so like when we access the hard drive, we are currently benefiting from quite sophisticated caching mechanisms that Linux has on my host machine, right? And if we were to be completely in control of the actual hard drive, it might be that our access patterns are way less optimal than the Linux kernel disk cache, right? And that might actually make us way slower. I don't know that because I haven't tested it. Although with an SSD, it might not matter that much. Let's see. Chihiro says, is it actually too warm for you to sit here wearing a Christmas hat? It is a little bit warm, I have to admit. But so far so good. Although my nose is clogging up because I have a bit of a cold, which is not great, but just gonna have to power through. Let's see. UVal says, what do you think about reflection in programming? Well, I mean, that's a broad topic, but I think in general, reflection is sweet. It is really nice to sort of enumerate your programming environment at runtime. And that's something that, they keep saying that they're going to add more reflection features to C++, and then we're still waiting for those. So I'm one of many people who are hopeful that we'll eventually get more of that. But I don't know if you're referring to like some specific type of reflection. So, but I think like in general, runtime reflection is cool, and compile time reflection is it's something that like we should just get, and actually like falling into the next question here, what in C++ do you like and dislike? So the lack of static reflection in C++ can sometimes be a bit frustrating. So for example, we have this pattern in our JavaScript engine, right? Where when we are walking the graph of reachable object in the garbage collected heap, we do this thing called visit edges. And wait, why doesn't this work now? Let's go to libjs. Yeah, so every JavaScript heap allocation has a virtual function called visit edges, and the job of this function is to call or to enumerate every other GC heap allocated object that might be or that is reachable from this object. And so this is how we build out the graph of reachable objects during garbage collection. And it's quite easy to forget to visit one of your edges in this function, because you kind of just have to know that if you have like a raw pointer member here, you have to remember to actually visit that in visit edges. And it would be super sweet if like imagine if C++ would let me do something like I don't know, like I would just say like visited putter or something like that. And then here I could just say like for each member of type visited putter something something. I would love to see something like that. And it is frustrating that you have to actually like remember to do these things, or you will have very sad things happen because something might get collected despite being reachable, and now you have a dangling pointer here. That's so like the absence of great static reflection is something I don't love about C++, but there are plenty of things I do like. I love how expressive the language is, and there are so many different ways that you can tackle problems. And when you get really comfortable with the language, it's so malleable, right? Like you can twist the language so that it suits you just how you want it to be, almost. Which, SerenityOS is a great example of that, because as you know, we have our own standard library instead of the STL, and we've just kind of bent and shaped C++ into this thing that looks quite different from C++ elsewhere. I do love that about C++. But that's it's of course a huge question, and there are many more things I like and many more things I dislike. But I guess those are some random answers to that. Dave says, exceptions are not exceptions in C++. We do not use exceptions in C++. Ryder Hitchhike says, so you did have a Santa hat. Well, of course I have a Santa hat. I have multiple Santa hats, actually. This one I picked up like a week ago or something, because I was shopping in a bargain bin in the grocery store, and they had these gorgeous LED lights that I'm currently wearing, and they also had Santa hats. And a few more weeks ago, I picked up these Santa cups as well, which I've been drinking from. I am a sucker for Christmas-themed bargain bins, I have to admit. I always buy stuff out of them every Christmas. Let's see. User says, are there any aspects of Serenity which were inspired by Windows other than the GUI? Well, not really. I think the influence of Windows kind of stops at the GUI layer, and it immediately switches to more of a Unix-like environment when you reach the command line. And the same thing, it's really just like the look and feel of the GUI that is inspired by Windows. The implementation of the GUI is not similar to the way the Windows GUI works, really. It's much more similar to something like X11 with the Qt library on top, because that's sort of the environment I come from. So the thing is that I grew up using Windows like many other people, and I was mostly a user of Windows. So I know the GUI of Windows really well, but I don't know that much about writing GUI Windows applications. I was more of a user of them, and I used to make command line applications like DOS applications or full screen things for Windows or DOS. I never did much like C or C++ programming for Windows GUI apps. So yeah, that's not really inspired, but yeah, the look and feel for sure. George Romero says, could Serenity be used as an embedded system for smart Christmas lights? Any plans for that? Well, I am not sure. As you know, or may know, I don't have a plan for anything. But I do have some dumb Christmas lights here, and maybe I could hook them up to Serenity and create something, but so could you. And if you're interested in connecting something like that, that would be a fun project for sure. Let's see. Sai Manish says, I recently switched from Windows to Mac. I don't understand why pressing close doesn't close the app. Well, I don't know what that means, really. Let's see. Kev In says, what are you most excited about 2022 with regards to SerenityOS? Any particular things in mind off the top of your head? So I guess I'm excited about stability and robustness in the coming year, because it really feels to me like we have sort of found where the GUI wants to go. So like the GUI is pretty much, it's not finished by any means, but it's starting to feel like we have a good idea of how the GUI should be like. And now we just need to keep implementing and refining that. But a lot of the stuff that underpins the system, like the kernel and the system services, they are a little bit rickety, let's say, or haphazard in places. And I'm really looking forward to making things more robust and more resilient, with stuff like much better error handling, error propagation, better memory management, things like that. And also looking at some of our like race conditions that we've had, and figuring those out, isolating and fixing those. So for example, was it yesterday or the day before, I finally found a bug that had been plaguing our CI system for months, just causing random CI builds to fail. It only took me like 3 hours of printf statements to find it, but it was really nice, and it turned out to be a one-line fix in the end. But that sort of thing is something I'm really looking forward to. And I guess one thing is that I see the near future as very unglamorous for Serenity. And maybe I'm a little bit worried about that, because I've been sort of, when I started the YouTube channel, I was making a lot of like these big feature videos regularly, and a lot of glamorous hacking on random things. And recently I'm like getting more and more into unglamorous things, and I haven't found sort of my groove for how to make video content about that in a way that seems fun. And that's something I definitely want to improve and get better at and get more comfortable with. So I guess that's also something I'm looking forward to in 2020, sort of a little bit apprehensively, figuring out how to adapt the YouTube channel to different types of work, like not just cool new feature hacking, right? But as usual, like I can speculate what's going to happen, but ultimately there are hundreds of people working on the system, so it can go in all kinds of directions. These are just some ideas I happen to have at the moment. But thank you for the question, Kevin. We appreciate that. Colonel K asks, did you use Emacs before, or do you have plans on using it? I have used Emacs a little bit, did not enjoy it, so I don't use it anymore. Ride or Hitchhike said, oh no, the DSP snort. Yeah, sorry about the snort. I'm gonna try to drink tea to avoid snorting as much as possible. Let's see, Knut Bluetooth says, the goal of Haiku, unlike most OSs, is not to be a general purpose operating system, but to be optimized for desktop use. Well, that is, I mean, that's a nice thing, I would say, because that's sort of a goal of Serenity as well, from my perspective. And I guess my goals for Serenity are even further refined, because I also, I like to say that we don't seek to acquire users for Serenity, only developers. So we are perhaps even more niche. But yeah, that's definitely something I can jam with. Fruchteis mit Erdbeer. Mit Erdbeer? Says, hi Andreas, have you ever suffered from lack of motivation to code at work? How did you deal with this when you still had a day job? Sure, I've definitely suffered from that. And I've dealt with that in different ways, some mature, some immature. I've certainly sort of goofed off and wasted time and got nothing done, and felt really bad about myself, and that was like not a good way to live, but I've done that. I've also had better strategies, like I think the most effective thing I've ever done about that was compartmentalizing my work and personal life. So when I've had jobs that required me to do things that were just not super interesting to me, which we often have, I try to like leave the job within work hours. So I didn't care about the job before 8 a.m. and I didn't care about the job after 5 p.m. At all, and just shut it out. Didn't check emails, didn't think about it, and ignored anyone's attempt to contact me about it. And it took some getting used to, because I spent many years like being really obsessed about work and thinking that work was so fulfilling and it's all I ever want to do. But by compartmentalizing my work life to a sort of specific set of hours of the day, I had I ended up having like a much better time outside of that, and also a much better time at work, because I guess before I started doing that, I felt like I didn't have to hurry up with anything, because, it doesn't matter if this takes all day, because I can just sit here all day and do it. But when I removed the possibility to do something all day, it sort of made me finish things faster, which just made the job more satisfying. But I think ultimately, if your job is like generally unmotivating for a long period of time, you might want to try a different job, right? Because it's normal to have like slumps in motivation, but if you're consistently unmotivated for weeks and months, something isn't right, and it's might be time to shop around for something else. Ron P with the super chat. Thank you, Ron P. Saying, hope you and your family have a Merry Christmas. Thank you indeed. Yeah, so far so good. Other than getting sick from hanging out with my nephews, everything is very nice and merry for sure. Let's see. Paya says, speaking of cups, how do you manage to keep that tea of yours warm for so long? Even in my warm country, it will be warm as a puddle in 15 minutes. That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe I'm just ignoring the fact that it gets kind of lukewarm. I mean, it's not hot, but it's maybe like 50 degrees Celsius or something. I guess it cools off over time, and what am I gonna do, right? I can't reheat it here. Although I once had a little USB powered hot plate that you could put stuff on. I guess it was for a coffee heater thing. I don't have it anymore though, but that thing seemed kind of like a dumb liability to keep by your computer. Little heat generator. But yeah, I think I'm just drinking lukewarm tea, really. I just ignore it. Red Santar says, have you tried game development? Sorry if it's a very repeat question. Not very much. I've written some very simple desktop games and some simple like DOS games back in the day, but I haven't done anything that you would call like modern game development. And I think I'm just not super interested. Every couple of years, I have sort of a short burst of thinking, oh shit, maybe I should make a game. Because I like playing games, so surely it would be cool to make a game of my own. But I always lose interest a couple of hours into that, so it hasn't really happened. Perikio XD says, I like that Macintosh-like taskbar I've seen in some screenshots. Is it going to come back as a GUI alternative? We removed the global menu bar a long time ago because it was not really... It didn't really make sense on modern hardware. It made a lot of sense on a tiny screen where vertical screen real estate was a rare commodity, but it doesn't really make sense when you have a big screen like we have today. Kevin Joseph says, Merry Christmas, Andreas. Recently discovered your channel and been loving how you demystify building something as complex as an operating system. Well, welcome to the channel, Kevin. I'm really glad to hear that word, demystify. That is one of my favorite things, and definitely something I try to do and I want to do. And we've been doing this for so long now that I almost like take it for granted, but it is a really important thing to do, I think, to demystify, because we need to teach the next generation of programmers that they can build everything that they have, right? Like that they can recreate the software stack themselves if they want to. We wouldn't want them growing up thinking that they're like standing on some type of holy artifact that could never be recreated or rebuilt from the ground up. So I'm glad you enjoy the channel so far. Panta82 says 2022, the year of Serenity on metal. Perhaps it, as usual, it's up to the people who take an interest in that. So maybe some people will, maybe you will. Ride or Hitchhike says, wait, you found the context switch triple fault bug. When was this? This was, let's find it exactly when it was. Right, CR3, it was yesterday, just after midnight. So, I mean, December 23, yeah, just at the start of that day. And it was a goofy race condition. So what was happening was when you exec and you create a new, or not, you don't create a new process, but you replace the currently executing binary with a different one, we create a new address space. And what happens is let's see where we set the new address space. So here, this is the fixed version of the code. Let's see what it looked like before. So, where is that? Syscalls. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. So what we were doing was we would build up a new address space from loading the new executable that we were going to exec, and then we would assign the new address space to process mspace, and then once we had assigned the new address space, we would then call the memory manager to enter the new address space. And this is where we actually set the CPU's currently active page directory. And there was a race here where if you had a context switch, so the scheduler would wake up and switch to a different thread while this was executing. So we were right in the middle of replacing the old address space with the new address space. We would switch to a different thread. And then when we would eventually try to switch back to this thread that was in the middle of exec, we had like a partially destroyed mspace, like partially destroyed address space object. And the scheduler would just switch back to this thread with the CR3 control register pointing at the partially destroyed page tables. And that's how the bug happened. So the fix was simply to enter the new address space before assigning it to mspace, which means that we don't even begin destruction of the old address space before we actually switch into the new one. So now you can context switch all you want. It doesn't matter because you've already switched into the new space. It was a very elusive bug. I found it by adding a billion printf statements to the box x86 emulator and then sort of stepping through various things. It's just a tedious process, but I found it. Let's see, Dave says, people appreciate good content on programming. I wouldn't worry. Yeah, I guess so. See, Paya says, for what it's worth, I enjoy profiling and performance boosting videos a lot more than cool new features. Twisting the guts of something as beastly as Serenity is just my jam. On that note, I never watch you write any tests. Do you just go by your gut while making big architectural-esque changes, or does Serenity have a general policy on tests? So we don't really have a policy on tests, but we do have tests. I don't tend to write a lot of tests for videos because I feel like that would slow down the videos quite a bit. And I'm not huge on testing immature systems either. I am a big fan of testing more mature systems, like our JavaScript engine, for example, which is extensively tested. And I think it's my general feeling that when something is still taking shape, it's not super important to test it. As long as you can do the basic smoke tests and make sure that things still run and so on. But over time, as things mature and things stabilize, especially APIs, we're growing organically a set of tests. So over time, we will accumulate a huge stack of those as well. I wouldn't be worried. Let's see. Simonish says, I remember you saying you worked at Apple. How was your experience there? So it was initially a great experience, and it kind of degraded towards the end, as things can do sometimes. But I really enjoyed working with so many technically competent people, and I really enjoyed seeing how that sausage was made, and it was nice to have access to the source code for all the Apple software that I used every day. It was a job. Had good things, had bad things. It's a really broad question, but I don't really have anything bad to say about them. I was a bit sad, I guess, that the company and the people there kind of... it seemed to me that when I started, people were very interested in programming and making software. And when I left, people were very interested in politics and activism, and software had become secondary for many people, and that was not an environment where I felt at home. Let's see. Pankaj says, now that you are focusing on Serenity full-time, how do you plan your day/week? I do not plan my day/week. That's the basic thing. But I guess I do have some pillars that I try to orient myself around. Obviously, I have office hours every Friday at 4 p.m. So that's one orienting signal that I have. And I want to make at least one video every week, ideally more, but minimum one for sure. And then I just basically hack on stuff every day. And do I have time slots dedicated to do different things related to Serenity? I don't really have that kind of organization. It's very much just what's it called? Fly by the seat of your pants or whatever. Fly? Wait, is that what it's called? Fly by the seat of your pants. Rely on instinct rather than logic or knowledge. Yes, indeed. I'm kind of just freestyling it so far. Let's see. Eliter Roger says, where do you see Serenity in 5 years? I really don't know. It's a good question, but I don't have an answer. We'll have to see in 5 years. Johnny Cernato says, hi Andreas, 2 weeks ago in a kernel optimization video, you talked about physical memory regions / zones, which were divided into 16 megabyte and 1 megabyte chunks. What defines the available memory size? Why can't you just increase the total memory and add another 16 megabyte block instead of the 10 1 megabyte ones? So the hardware defines the available memory size. When we boot up, we enumerate all of the available memory, like the physical RAM. And if the machine says there are, 20 megabytes of RAM total, we're going to get one 16 megabyte block, and then we have 4 megabytes to spare. So we don't really have the option of expanding that additional 4 megabytes into a 16 megabyte block. And the reason that you don't end up with like beautiful even numbers oftentimes is that the hardware sort of reserves some of the RAM for its own use. It could be reserved by the BIOS or the graphics card or whoever. Some memory ranges are simply reserved, so the operating system doesn't get access to those, and we honor that information, so we don't try to use reserved memory. And because of that, we end up with these kind of slightly lopsided tail end of the memory range. Colonel K says, do you port some Linux programs to SerenityOS? What are those, and what challenges did you find during the porting stage? So the ports directory has a large collection of random open source software that has been ported to Serenity. Wow, look at this. Quite a bit of stuff. I don't know that they're all necessarily Linux programs, but they are open source programs. And these are what they are. These are the currently available stable ports, or somewhat hopefully stable ports at least. And I'm not the only person who has ported things, of course. I think I didn't even do half of these. More other people have done way more ports than I have at this point. But the challenges that I usually ran into while doing ports, which I don't do ports much anymore, but when I used to do ports, a lot of the challenges were that you would try to build something and then it was missing some functionality in our standard C library. So you would have to go and either just stub it out and add like a dummy implementation that does nothing, or you had to actually implement some missing functionality. Like when I was originally doing the GCC and binutils ports, they relied heavily on IO streams, so like stdio.h IO streams from the standard C library, and just getting all of that stuff right so that buffering was working correctly, line buffering versus non-line buffering, and like ungetting characters, things like that. All those things had to work right, and that was really challenging because I remember I would have these bugs that the only way to reproduce it would be to build some C program that took like 10 seconds to build, and then when you would try to link that, then it would fail because you had some like stdio bug in libc, and the linker would fail in some obscure way. So it was tedious to reproduce. But I think nowadays the bugs are kind of similar in nature, in that we have like missing functionality and stuff that just needs to be stubbed out or implemented in standard libraries. But our standard library has definitely become better since those early days, and you can mostly rely on the core functionality to work reasonably well. But there's always room for improvement, and there's way more bugs that we haven't found yet, for sure. Sati Singh says, Merry Christmas, Andreas, and Merry Christmas to you too, sir. Tim with the super chat saying, Merry Christmas, Andreas. Thank you very much, Tim. Merry Christmas to you too. Tim had his Natalie project on Hacker News yesterday or today, and let's see if it's still there. Oh wait, that's not the address, is it? It finally fell off the front page. Yeah, it's right here. And it's funny because it reminded me of when Serenity gets on Hacker News, because you get these people who sort of don't understand why you would do something for fun, and they come and they question why you're doing what you're doing. And it's almost like a rite of passage or something to when you're doing something really fun, then eventually you have to go through Hacker News finding it, and then these kind of people who are confused about fun shit on your project a little bit. But I think, as I was telling you on Twitter, Tim, I think that for every one whiny person on Hacker News, there are 1,000 quiet people who discovered your project now, and hundreds of those people thought it was pretty cool. And I bet you that a handful of those people will eventually find your Discord server and maybe hack on the project a little bit. And you have to kind of take the good with the bad with places like Hacker News, because in any sufficiently large population, you're always going to find somebody sour or just downright unpleasant. It's just it's all about percentages, right? If you have thousands of people in a group, you get what you get. It becomes almost like a population sample, even if it's a little bit biased, being all programmers. But anyways, it was really cool to see Natalie getting some attention, which I think it deserves because it is a cool project. So if you guys who are watching this are not familiar with Natalie, which I already did a video on, I definitely recommend checking that out. And I also recommend checking out Tim's YouTube channel, where he hacks on Natalie. And apparently he has posted a video that I haven't watched, so I'm going to watch that later for sure. But yeah, check that out. Natalie is a Ruby to C++ compiler. Let's see. Graham says, I think hardware development hinders OS development. Could we be building better CPUs to allow better development of operating systems? I don't know. I don't think so necessarily. But I do think it's interesting if you look at a company that does both hardware and software, like Apple, and you look at how much faster they're able to implement and take advantage of new security mechanisms, like how they have these pointer authentication systems pack on their ARM CPUs, whereas if you want to put something into x86 to implement a new security mitigation, you have to coordinate between Intel and AMD and Microsoft and eventually they're I think a company like Apple that builds both the hardware and the software are in a much better position to do synergistic development on both ends of that thing. So I don't think that hardware development hinders it. I think it's more was it Steve Jobs who said that If you're really serious about software, you need to make your own hardware as well. I do think there's some truth to that, or at least there's a great advantage to making your own hardware if you are making software. But I don't really have the budget, manpower, or know-how to make hardware right now. But who knows where we'll go in the future. But I mean, to answer specifically the last part of your question, could we be building better CPUs to allow better development of operating systems? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I do think that is hard to do if you don't control both sides of that story. Devashish says, a lot of the questions asked in office hours are about you and have little to do with Serenity. For example, this one. Asking as someone who's asked such questions in the past, does that annoy you? It does not annoy me at all, because the name of this channel is Andreas Kling, and it's not like the SerenityOS channel. It is my channel, and I have tons of videos where I just talk about personal topics or my personal feelings on things, and my ambition is to be a open and transparent person who speaks openly about like what I suck at and what I think I do well, where I think I can improve, things like that, and things I've definitely sucked at in the past. So I don't mind personal questions. Of course, there are privacy boundaries where I will just say, oh, that's private, but in general, I don't mind it at all. But thank you for asking, though. That is a very respectful question. UVal says, when you were a child, did you ever think you'll have a different job? Yes, I guess I thought so, because when I was a teenager, I thought I was going to become a punk rock superstar. But then I got back into programming again. And because originally as a young child, I wanted to become a programmer because I really looked up to this programmer guy at my dad's office. But then I became a teenager and I started thinking punk rock was really cool and metal was cool. So I wanted to become like somebody like that. But then I kind of grew out of that and just wanted to be a programmer again. Let's see. Oh man, I am so far behind here. I'm just gonna catch up a little bit. Leia Organa says, how do you feel about localization for Serenity? So I feel about localization like it's definitely not a priority for me, because in my experience, I'm natively Swedish, right? But in my experience, every single Swedish user interface I've ever used has been crappy. And I've used free software interfaces in Swedish. I've used proprietary software interfaces in Swedish, and they've all been bad. And I really want Serenity to look good and to feel good, and I don't think it is remotely possible, even with like huge resources, to make good localizations of software, especially not software that keeps changing as much as Serenity does. So for that reason, I prefer that the system is unlocalized and in English. And unlike systems that have ambitions of acquiring as many users as possible, which are the typical ambitions for software, Serenity doesn't really have that ambition. We're just making it for ourselves. And since we're all here, we obviously understand English, so it's not really an issue. In the end, I'm not the only person who decides what Serenity is. And I think if somebody would propose a way to do localization in a way that didn't disrupt anybody who didn't care about it, and also didn't make the system look bad, then I would be interested, of course. But I have no personal experience of ever seeing a well localized system, even at companies that, spend a lot of money on it. So that's sort of how I feel about it. But I would love to change my mind if something changes and evidence comes out that you can do this properly. Satisin says, Hacker News has some great stuff from time to time, but yeah, it has a very negative bunch of people that just can't understand doing something for fun rather than money, money, money. They are all about that grind to be the next VC bro billionaire. Well, yeah, I don't know that they are all, like literally everybody there is about that grind, but you definitely have a loud bunch of people on Hacker News who are in that, VC bro billionaire grind set, let's call it. If you listen to people like that, it will not help you really in any way. So, but it's definitely something I've fallen into that trap before. That's why I can sort of speak clearly about it, because I've stepped into this trap myself so many times. Because I'm a human, and human nature is, I think, to maybe overemphasize negativity and to overvalue incoming criticism. So, you get, if you get 10 people saying, wow, that's a cool thing you have there, and you get that one guy saying, why would you even do that? Then because you are a silly human, you listen to that guy that negative guy. But I think you can sort of, I don't know, you can sort of ascend, I guess, spiritually to rise above that if you practice. And it's a bit like, it reminds me of this practicing gratitude kind of thing, because you have to, at least initially, I had to force myself to focus on the positive stuff and like consciously ignore the negative feedback, negative people. But as I did that more and more consciously, it started becoming unconscious. And I'm really glad that I started like making an effort to filter out that negativity, because nowadays it doesn't really get to me, and it definitely used to get to me in the past. But yes, I think you can rise above it if you try. Anyway, what was I talking about? Colonel K says, I want to contribute to SerenityOS, but I don't know much about C++. Maybe I will learn C++ first. Yes, or maybe you will learn C++ while you are contributing to SerenityOS, which is a path that many people have taken as well. It's all about what's good and fun for you, for sure, Mr. or Miss Colonel K. Let's see. Jacob Sinclair says, I hope you enjoy Christmas, Andreas. What would you say would be a good starting point for contributing to SerenityOS, getting to know the codebase, etc.? So I always give the same advice, and I'm going to give it once again. The best way to contribute to Serenity is to build the system, boot the system, and then mess around on the system until you come across something where you think, this doesn't seem perfect, or this is a bug, right? Or something like that. Or, hey, wait a minute, this obvious feature is missing here that I think should really be here. And once you find something like that, then you try to figure out how to implement it. So basically, the best way to contribute, from my perspective, is to find something that itches you and then scratching that. That's how the majority of people have gotten started in the system. And it's really nice because it means that everybody starts in a totally random place instead of having sort of a set entry point to the system. We just get, every new person has a new place where they want to start doing something. Dave says, in my experience, many of the comments are written by midwits who think they are smarter than they really are. Midwits. That's a hilarious word, midwit. I guess it's like somebody who's in the middle of the curve, but they think that they're actually above average or whatever. That's a great word. Sure, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the type of person who just spews negativity online. I would say pretty reliably is going to be somebody who thinks that they are smarter and more important than they really are, because why would you do that otherwise? Tim says, one reason I love the community you've built with Serenity. Y'all are so much more encouraging than the internet at large. Love you all. Well, thank you, Tim. And we love you too. That's a very Christmassy message right there. I think the internet, it gets very cynical sometimes and edgy and unpleasant for the sake of attention. And I like to think that the SerenityOS project and community is proof that you can build and attract an audience and build a community without any of that type of behavior, and you can just encourage each other and have fun together with programming, and you don't need to be nasty, but you don't need to be like overly cheesy either, right? Like you can just be encouraging and serious, which is our brand of community, I guess. Let's see. Federico says, how do you handle burnout? How do you recognize it working on the same project? Thanks. Oh, I don't have a great answer off the cuff. How do you recognize it working on the same project? But how do I personally handle burnout? So since I started working on this, all of my instances of burnout have been like very localized. So I would get kind of burned out on this refactoring I was doing last week, for example, because I just got really frustrated that I hit an architectural problem that I had like 30 committed changes, and then I had found an architecture problem that would require me to redo a whole bunch of things, and I just felt like to heck with this for now. But when that happens in Serenity, I can just move to some other part of Serenity. So I don't know, like it doesn't lead to burnout in that same way. But I don't know. I think I have a video about burnout that I made 2 years ago or something like that. Yeah. And I guess I don't actually remember what I said, but and I don't know if I would even agree with myself anymore, because it was too long ago. But check that out if you're interested in what I thought about that 2 years ago. Maybe I said something wise, or maybe I said something totally dumb. Who knows? It is actually really weird. I sometimes, people ask me something, and then I go and I look through my old videos to see if I talked about something before. And it's really weird because enough time has passed that I don't remember talking about these things. And it's kind of interesting to hear them, because it's like I'm hearing thoughts that come from my own head, but I don't remember thinking them. It's a fascinating feeling. But I'm really happy that I have these recordings, so I can go back and reference them. And this makes me miss having a reason to drive around as much as I did back then. Anyway, let's see. Supernova says, where are the wallpapers from? Well, this wallpaper right here, I made today, although the cat dog with the Christmas hat was made by Network Exception on Discord. So Network Exception posted this. I think they call it something like cat dog Christmas sleep or something like that. And it's a new Discord emoji that we have, and it's adorable. So that's why we're using it right here. Let's see. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce this name. Let's look that up. Pronunciation. How do you pronounce this Vietnamese name? Quoc. Quoc. Okay, well, Quoc says, as an ex-programmer of WebKit and currently OS programmer, do you think new modern mitigations can eliminate memory corruption vulnerabilities like memory tagging, memory cage, and so on? So I don't think they can necessarily eliminate all the vulnerabilities because, at least if history is any indication, vulnerability research is just a cat and mouse game where you come up with all the cool mitigations and you think you got everything covered, and then the black hat people eventually figure out some new way to break your security. But I think that a lot of the modern mitigations are very strong, and they certainly make exploitation more expensive, which is really what a lot of security mitigation is about. It's about making like exploit authoring more economically painful. And I think memory tagging and stuff like that, especially the stuff they do on iOS, is powerful, but even that stuff has already been broken, right, by people like Luca Tedesco and those guys. And I don't know. It's an interesting space, and I don't know the answer, I guess. But I enjoy watching the technology develop on both sides, both on the exploitation and on the mitigation side. And I don't really stay like completely on the state of the art edge of things, but I like to read up on these things. And there are a bunch of mitigations that I want to do in Serenity, and definitely going to be doing in the next year. Like some cool ideas from the browser stack on iOS, for example, and things that we can do without hardware support in Serenity. Let's see. Atlas says, there's a lot of ports of software to Serenity. There are efforts to port drivers too, or do they need to be built from scratch? And are they integrated directly to the kernel or separated driver files? There are no efforts to port drivers. Drivers are built from scratch, and they are currently directly in the kernel. But of course, they are separate files in the kernel, but they are built as part of the kernel. Vesna says, Andreas, I saw you recommend a movie with Christian Slater. I never watched it, but you reminded me of the music by Ivan Neville. Maybe you don't know who he is, but his best song is from that movie. Great. Yes, I know that song that you're referring to. It's, oh shit, what's it called? The name ends in Fall in Love, but what's it called? Don't Want to Fall in Love? Ivan... Why Can't I Fall in Love? That's the one. That is a great movie, and a great song from that movie. Pump Up the Volume, one of my old favorite movies from childhood. Of course, I remember the song, and I should watch that movie again. I watched another movie with Christian Slater just the other day called Hard Rain. And it was like this 90s kind of action, I don't know what to call it, action thriller or something. And it was just an excellent 1990s movie. A little bit forgettable, but just excellent. Anyway, Angelo says, Merry Christmas, Andreas. When can we start hearing you singing punk rock? Well, I am unlikely to do that anytime soon because at the moment my voice hurts, but who knows? Maybe someday I would do that again. I'm not particularly good at singing because I struggle to hit notes, and I've tried various times to improve at it, but I never like made any kind of structured attempt at it because I guess I didn't care enough to try properly. So I don't know. But that would be a fun addition to the channel if I would start making punk rock music. We'll see. Jones says, "Hey Andreas, Merry Christmas to you and your fam, especially to your nephew." Aha. Yes, thank you for that. Merry Christmas to you too. I've been having a bunch of fun with my oldest nephew recently because I set up a Minecraft server for him and me to play on together, and every morning I log on to see if he was building anything yesterday, and this morning I met him, and he tricked me into a pool of lava and then laughed at me as I burned to death, and it was just adorable. Let's see. SLR says, "Hello Andreas, will there be a broadcast on Friday, December 31st? Well, I guess that is in 7 days, so that would be office hours on that day. I don't see why we wouldn't do that. New Year's Eve office hours sounds good to me." Let's see. SLR says, "Andreas, after doing some research, I came to the conclusion that the kernel is actually a driver. How true is that?" I guess, I mean, in an abstract sense, it is true that the kernel is a sort of driver. It's a driver for your whole machine. But it's also kind of an over abstraction. Because a kernel does a lot more than that. So you usually talk about kernel in finer detail than just saying that it's a driver. It's drivers are part of a kernel, but you also have resource management and memory allocation, scheduling, things like that. Furious says, "Hello, hope you're doing well." Hello, Furious. I hope you're doing well and that you are not furious. Armo says, "Blessed Christmas to all in the SerenityOS community. Great cheers for Andreas. Hooray." Thank you, Armo. And a blessed Christmas to you as well. I hope that everything has worked out for you and yours. I remember you had a thing a while back with somebody in the hospital. So I hope that has resolved since then. Let's see. Mati says, "Do you remember that Grub has a Christmas Easter egg screen? Maybe add something like that to Serenity." Aha, but Serenity already has multiple Easter eggs. So you just need to find them. Although now it's Christmas, so it's not really appropriate to talk about Easter eggs yet. Christmas Easter egg has a weird ring to it, actually, on that note. Leia Organa says, "I love the monthly update videos, hoping for a highlights of 2021 version as well." Well, we are definitely doing a monthly video for December, because that's what we always do. And maybe we will do a little bit of a 2021 like looking back at the year, although that sort of stuff tends to happen more in like in the birthday post. So we kind of do the year in review. On SerenityOS.org we have these happy birthday posts, right? So we did the last one on October 10th, and that's where we go through the every cool thing that happened in the year. So we just do it on a custom year boundary instead of the new year. So if anybody missed those posts, by the way, go in and check them out. They're right here. Let's see. Sharnigan Ninja says, do you read a lot of research papers? If so, are there any that you really liked? Not really. I haven't read a research paper in quite some time. At least not a whole one. Like I've skimmed research papers every now and then, looking for some little detail or some little how some specific finding was worded, but I don't read a lot of papers back to back. Spirit Storm says, do you have any plan to do machine learning projects using C++? No, not really. I don't have any personal interest in machine learning, so I don't think I'll be doing it anytime soon. Mehedi says, how different is Serenity C++ from standard C++? I guess I would say it's pretty different, because and really the main difference, of course, is the absence of the standard library, and the basic data structures are like we offer a similar set of basic data structures, but all of the names and formatting of things are different, you get used to it, but it is a bit different. The best way to get used to it is to just try to hack on something, as I was saying earlier, to just pick up the system and poke around, look for something that you want to do, and try to do it, see what happens. Let's see. Jagger DeLeo says, following up on the driver thing, is there already some kind of dynamic loader support for something else in the kernel? So we do have loadable module support in the kernel, although I don't know that anybody has actually tried dynamic module loading for a long time. It is something that worked in the past, and it could be made to work again. It's very likely that it's broken right now. But the basic idea has worked in the past. Like you create a module which is like a separate .o file that exports some set of symbols that we then call from the kernel when we load and unload the module. It is, let's see, what's it called? Mod load? Module load? I forget what they're called. Yeah, I thought it was mod load. Okay, my C line is not indexing properly, I think, so I'm just gonna invalidate and restart here. But yeah, there is a module loading and module unloading API in the kernel. Simonish says, looking forward for videos on Dark Souls. Did you play Sekiro? I have not played Sekiro yet, so I've played Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3. I finished 1 and 3, did not finish 2 because it was boring. And I started playing Bloodborne a little bit, but I found the environment and the settings in Bloodborne were kind of, I don't know, I didn't really enjoy the look of that game, so I got a little bit bored of that. And then I've been playing Dark Souls 1 multiple times over instead. But I have yet to play Sekiro. That does sound interesting. Let's see. Devashi says, adding to the comments on toxicity of the internet, I recently visited B on 4chan and I opened this thread about India. I never laughed and cried so hard at the same time. Who is Pajit anyway? It was a mixed experience, but I won't be visiting that site anytime soon again. Yeah, I mean, B is unbearable. It is just completely unbearable. And if you are able to stay on B for more than a minute, I would say you are probably a teenager or like socially maladjusted in some way. But I don't know. It's weird. There are, as with any website, 4chan has good parts and bad parts, but it is a very negative space in general and on average, and it's especially negative towards anybody who is not anonymous, like myself, for example. So I don't really like to go there anymore. I used to go there in the past, but they are just I don't know. They're like this negative energy that I talked about earlier that I just choose to avoid, and it makes life nicer to not invite that into your environment. Let's see. Garuda says, hello, bro. Vesna, okay, you know what is good. Yes, the Ivan Neville song is good. There are a lot of great songs on the soundtrack to pump up the volume. I especially like that song by Stan Ridgway that's on there as well, and the Leonard Cohen songs, of course. Anyway. Garuda says, what's the method to find bug in website? I don't really understand your question. Samuel says, what's the plan for SerenityOS? I don't know. What's the plan for airline food? Fructais mit Erdbeer says, you said you'd like static reflection in C++. Have you ever looked at the Circle C++ compiler? If so, what did you think about its implementation of static reflection? I have seen the Circle C++ compiler. That's Sean Baxter's thing. And it's pretty cool. I definitely, I think it has a bunch of interesting ideas. I'm just going to link that to people if they want to check it out. But personally, I find it looks like really awkward. There's something about the way that the Circle language looks that just I don't know. It has a weird economy of words or economy of tokens or whatever. I feel like it doesn't look clear to me, but maybe I need to spend more time with it. I don't generally like to comment on things that I haven't spent much time with, but because it's so adjacent to C++, I guess I feel like it's okay. But I do need to give it a more of a chance. But I don't know. It just it looks strange. Like C++ template metaprogramming is weird in general. I think the way that they treat types in a language like Zig is perhaps a lot more intuitive and logical to me. So it would be interesting to see something that takes a more similar approach to that. Armo says, I would call the monthly video for December as a yearly overview. Yes, I mean, in a way it is, but it's also a monthly overview for December. Supercomputer says, oh, we removed that support for modules. Oh, shoot. Okay. I totally forgot about that, but I guess you're right. Then we should probably also remove mod load and mod unload from the build script. Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, now I remember. We removed the support for modules because it was unmaintained. So it's something that has worked in the past, but we don't have it anymore. We could totally add it back if somebody had a compelling reason. But at the moment, we don't really have anything. And then Fructais mit Erdbeer says, I also tied a chain of Christmas lights around myself. So we are now Christmas trees together. Well, thank you, my friend. That is excellent. So Merry Christmas indeed. Let's see. Atlas87 says, talking about 4chan will inevitably spawn a thread about you talking about 4chan on B. That's okay. I know that there are sometimes threads about me on 4chan, and I'm sure that people have their little fun. I have nothing against that, but I just like to ignore them. So people tell me that there are threads. I get these links to them, but what am I supposed to do with that? Let's see. Did I miss any questions here? Dun, 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 dun. I probably missed something, but that would have been a while back. So, wow, we are caught up to the bottom. Very nice. So, I actually earlier this week I recorded a 2-hour podcast where I was interviewed by somebody, and it was a really good interview. We went in depth on a lot of things that I'd never really talked about before on YouTube, and I really enjoyed that conversation. And it's going to be coming out in February, so it will take some time, but I think people are gonna you're probably gonna like that one because we talked about a lot of really like personal topics, which I haven't thought about for a long time, and I almost surprised myself with how easy it was to just talk about these difficult personal things. So that's something I was doing this week. But of course, it was also a lot about Serenity and programming and the usual stuff. But it's interesting how these podcasts and things like that. For a while, I felt like they were all the same, but they're really not. Like, it really depends on the person interviewing, and it's obvious. It's just that I felt for a while like I was doing sort of the SerenityOS publicity tour, where people would ask me kind of similar questions, and I would talk about similar things. But at the same time, that's also kind of what I do on office hours every week. And now I'm just thinking out loud without really a clear path to where I want to go. So I'm just going to cut myself off right there and answer a question. So Garuda says, "Where are you from, bro?" I am from Sweden, bro. I've lived in many different countries, but I am from Sweden, and I have moved back to Sweden. So that's where I live right now for the past couple of years. And it is not bad here at all. Sakar says, "You are looking funny." All right, well, that's probably because I am wearing a Santa Claus hat and RGB lights. But if there's something else funny about me, then do let me know. Let's see if we can run the system here. Ah, man, this Christmas hat is warm, I have to tell you. But I made it this far. I might as well power through to the end. Wallace says, "Have you ever worked with embedded systems? If so, with what architecture or platform, and what did you use to do?" Yes, I have worked with multiple different embedded systems. So I did a lot of work on cell phones, both at Nokia and Apple. And I've also worked on sort of more old style classic embedded stuff, like really, really embedded things like Atmel 8051 based systems, which, let's see, like these little guys, making ROMs for those type of things. And I've also been working on embedded Linux. So like single board computers using some ARM chip and oh man, what was it called? That embedded Linux distribution that everybody uses, Yocto. Yeah, the Yocto project thing. So we were making a Linux distro based on that, and it was doing a whole bunch of that stuff. And I used to do, I've done both architecture work and performance work on embedded. So One of my main areas of interest and expertise is going fast and going small. So I spent many years just working on making browsers faster on cell phones. And then I also did some industrial 5G communications equipment after that. That was my most recent day job here in Sweden. I did a 5G communications device on top of a ARM-based Linux system. So that was like building the whole thing, not just the not just performance work. Let's see. Panta82 says, what do you think about dependency injection software pattern? I don't know, dude. I gotta Google that. I don't even know what that is. Dependency injection C++. Let's see an example of it. What is dependency injection? Okay, well, I don't know. This is, I can probably understand this, but but I'm too hyped up by office hours right now to take in a new concept. So I don't have a strong opinion about it. Like I just learned about it from you just this very moment. So I have to actually take some time to understand what it is and how it can be applied. And then I'll get back to you with an opinion once I have one. Garuda Industry says, I love you, bro. Well, thank you. I love you all too. Each in your own special way. Let's see. Dave says, do you think Fuchsia OS Google has is going to replace Android? Well, I guess it would replace... I don't know. I have no idea what Google is doing with their strategy. I imagine that if they keep investing in it and they keep building it out and it works well, then why wouldn't they? Because obviously it is it's frustrating for a company like Google to depend on something like Linux, which is not fully in their control. And having something that you control completely is usually how a company like Google would prefer to operate. That was certainly I know that, before Blink split off from WebKit, Chrome was using WebKit together with Safari and other browsers. And I know that both Apple and Google really didn't like sharing WebKit with the other company, but it was kind of tolerated because of all the technical advantages of having like that huge, the double-sized team working together. It was considered to be worth it for a long time, but then, things got heated, friction became too much, and it forked. But and I think ultimately there's always that desire for control in a place like Google. So I do think that something that they control completely, like Fuchsia, has that advantage over Linux. But I don't know what will happen ultimately, right? I can only guess. Doomy says, did you like doing the industrial 5G stuff? It was interesting to learn about for a while, but after I learned all the basics, I realized that I'm not really interested to learn more than this. And then I ended up leaving that job anyway to work on Serenity full-time instead. Sakar says, any plans on porting embedded compilers to Serenity? There are no plans in particular to do anything. I would refer you to the FAQ, which states the general plans for Serenity, which are about whether or not something will be implemented for Serenity. And the answer is, I don't have a plan for features or technologies, etc. to implement. That goes for basically anything that you might ask about. But if you want to port an embedded compiler to Serenity, go for it. Armo says, Andreas, how is your mother and your cat? My mother is fine, I think, and the cat is also fine. I saw them a few hours ago. I had lunch, and the cat went in and out through the door approximately 5,000 times in the time that I was there, and I guess that means she's functioning as a cat should. Thank you for asking. Jack Nitty says, is the badge pattern still used in the codebase? Absolutely. We have badges left and right. Just look at all these badges. Look at this codebase. You can fit so many badges in this bad boy. Yes, we are using badges everywhere. Alfredo M says, I was able to build Serenity for my first time during this talk in only one shot. The build system and the documentation is really straightforward. Awesome work and Merry Christmas. Excellent. That is great to hear. I'm always pleasantly informed, I guess, not surprised, but informed when I hear from people that it was easy to build a system and the documentation was helpful. Because I haven't needed to reference the documentation recently myself, so it's good to know that new people are able to get up to speed with the system quickly. That's really good. So I hope you'll have fun with the system, and I hope that you find something annoying that you would want to work on, because that is absolutely the best part. Let's see. Dave says, dependency injection is useful for decoupling applications in Java and C#. However, people go mad with it. Dependency injection isn't so much of a thing I've found while learning C++. Okay, well, it sounds like, I don't know how that's going to turn out with dependency injection, but I'm still going to look into it for sure. XY says, kind of an outsider question, but I never could really understand the love for code. I'm wondering what you guys like so much about it. Maybe it's just a process. I was never able to stay interested. Well, I guess everybody has a different reason for falling in love with code, but I think it's just a passion that some people happen to get, just like there are people who develop a passion for puzzles or for math or for cooking or whatever. It's an interesting situation because it's something that some people just get naturally passionate about, but at the same time, it also happens to be sort of a very lucrative career. And because of that, you have many people trying to learn this thing that motivated by the ability to make money with it. And I have absolutely nothing against that, but it is interesting to see the contrast between people who just naturally gravitate towards programming versus people who see it as as a career opportunity or as a tool. But I'm for sure personally, I've just gravitated towards programming since childhood. So I have no idea what it feels like to not be able to maintain that interest. It's like if I should tell you what I like so much about it, I guess I like the feeling of describing something to a computer and then having the computer validate my description that this complicated thing that I told the computer, it came out exactly as I imagined it in my head. I guess that's something that appeals to me. And I like to build mental models of like abstract architecture, abstract software architecture, and then to sort of tell the computer about them and see them come to life is really cool. I think a lot of people you tend to find graphics programming helpful for finding that connection, because maybe you don't find a way to connect with programming if you're just doing like command line text-based stuff. But if you can actually modify graphics and see something like come to life and take shape, some people respond much better to that. But I mean, I guess you didn't ask for advice on connecting with programming. You're just more like interested in what we like so much about it. I think everybody likes something different. For me, I like to build big things and then see them come to life inside the computer. Let's see. Jack Nitty says, so is the key behind badges that only a class that is a friend of it can make an instance, right? Right. So the badge, a badge of timer like this makes timer into a friend of this badge type. And so the timer class is able to instantiate this type of badge, but nobody else can instantiate this type of badge. And the effect of that is that this function right here, which is a function in the window class, can only be called from the timer class, because the timer class is the only place where this type of badge can be instantiated. So it's essentially like an extension to the access control mechanism of public protected private in C++, where you're saying that this method is public, but we only give access to it if you can show a badge proving that you are a timer, if that makes sense. Let's see. Jagger DeLeo says, what other OS and entire user space can be easily built from source in an hour? In under an hour. Gotta love Serenity. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. Of course, our build time keeps increasing as complexity increases, such is life. But I have some patches actually that remove a large number of files without breaking anything. That were part of my web engine refactor, so that would be a nice side effect of that. But yeah, it's funny, like can be easily built in under an hour, because I think was it last week when in the previous office hours I built like the Serenity codebase like 2 days into development, and it built like in a second. So it's funny how it's gone from like something that builds in less than a second to something that takes substantially longer to build. Let's see. German WTB says, seeing as you put quite some work into removing your accent in English, can you understand that some people have no problem with having an accent and the process change your native accent? Can you understand that some people have no problem with having an accent? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't have anything against somebody being fine with having an accent. I don't mind accents. I just personally found it interesting and valuable to myself to try to like get rid of my Swedish accent and develop a more like neutral American English accent, because I felt it would allow me to communicate better. But I really usually don't have trouble understanding people with other accents, and many accents I think sound really beautiful. For example, my wife speaks with a very beautiful accent, and I enjoy hearing that. And there are some accents that I struggle to understand, honestly, but it usually works out. It's just that it's people have interesting ways of talking, and I don't think it's something that everybody should do. Like, I don't think everybody should strive to remove their accent or to change the way they speak. It's just something that I'm personally interested in, so something I ended up doing. Ooh, John McDowell with the super chat. Thank you very much, John. 10 pounds. That symbol is such an interesting little symbol. The pound sign. Is that the pound sign? Or is the hashtag the pound sign? If I search for pound sign, what do I get? pound sign, right? I feel like I've heard pound sign used for both this guy and for the hashtag. Anyways, thank you very much for the super chat, John. Really appreciate it. Doomy says, I like programming, but for the life of me, I cannot motivate myself to finish any projects outside of work. So I don't know how your life is like and what your time budget is like, but I would recommend, if possible, to try to constrain your work hours so that you don't work any more hours than necessary, and allow yourself to have time outside of work, because at least that's certainly a situation I put myself in the past, where I would just allow my work hours to expand infinitely, like all the way into and through my night hours, which were supposed to be my like private time. But you might have a totally different life, so I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But either way, I hope you find a way to do stuff out of work that's fun, even if it's not programming. Matas says, it's fun to try new things, new ideas, learn something. Programming is fun. That's why I love it. Frick yes, I agree. That is definitely fun. Alvan says, what do you think about functional programming? Can this be for system programming? Sorry if this is a dumb question. I don't think it's a dumb question. I also don't know the answer. I haven't done enough functional programming to have an opinion about it, so I'm just not going to comment. Let's see. Fruchteis mit Erdbeer says, what is your general opinion on SH and Bash? The shell language always seems like a major weak point in the Linux terminal. Do you think a better shell meaningfully improves usability? I mean, that seems likely, right? It seems like a better shell language could potentially unlock a higher degree of shell productivity, but I'm pretty deeply entrenched, I guess, in the Unix command line because I've studied it and used it extensively for many, many years. So I'm very comfortable in the Unix command line, but I'm also like receptive to new ideas, and I think it can be improved. But I think I often see like these attempts to sort of come up with an entirely new shell experience, right? And I don't know that any of those have captivated me so far. So I mean, I like what JT and friends are doing with New Shell, for example, where they're trying to have more like rich data exchange and structured data in a shell. And if that sort of thing is interesting to you, then I definitely recommend checking out New Shell. But personally, I guess I'm more interested in messing with the boundary between the shell and the terminal than I am in messing with the shell itself, sort of within the constraints of a classic VT100 terminal, which is what basically most shells do. I think since we control both the shell and terminal in Serenity, we do have an interesting opportunity to just mess around and make new types of integrations that haven't been as readily explored. Kook says, not gonna lie, every Swedish person literally sounds like both a native English speaker and a native Swedish speaker. Sweden does have a very high English skill, like on the national average, I think. You have to try pretty hard to find people in Sweden who don't speak decent English. But many people are uncomfortable speaking English, but then if you try to speak with them, then they do just fine and surprise themselves with their abilities. And yeah, it is true. It's a very English-speaking country. Let's see. Coding Genesis says, whoa, almost missed it. Didn't think you would stream today. I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. Hope you all are doing fine. Enjoy yourself this weekend. I wish you all the best. Thank you, Coding Genesis. I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas as well. And I'm grateful for all the Merry Christmas wishes. The Christmas spirit in this chat is just outstanding. Thank you, everybody. Lucas Spinati says, in Canada and the United States, # refers to the symbol, how do I pronounce that? Hashtag, says Wikipedia. Yeah, all right. So it's ambiguous. Isn't that great? Although you know what's the dumbest ambiguity in the universe is bi-weekly, and I guess bi-monthly, right? Which means every 2 weeks or twice a week. That's an extremely confusing word. Anyway, John McDowell says, it is the #. The hash is sometimes, it's called a pound in the US and sometimes called an octothorpe. Ah, yes, the octothorpe. Of course. Just rolls right off the tongue. Octothorpe. See. John was encouraging us to check out the fish shell if we've been on bash or z shell for a while. Yeah, I mean, I definitely need to check out some other shells, although I guess I never really feel like my shell is holding me back, but that's also kind of a limiting mindset, I think, because just because you don't feel held back by something doesn't mean that something else wouldn't offer interesting new opportunities. Let's see. German WTB says, have you ever found yourself trapped in some design pattern and much later noticed that the pattern introduced needless complexity? For example, object orientation when simple functions would do just fine. Sure. Yeah. I mean, when I first learned about C++, I made a lot of classes that I didn't need because I thought it was neat to make classes. I think everybody goes through that. And I think in general, like especially when you are younger in your programming career, you learn like the first couple of patterns that you learn, you tend to overuse, I think, which is just natural because you discover that there's sort of another layer to programming skill that you didn't know about before. Like, wait a minute, there are these cool reusable patterns. And then you learn a couple and then you just start to jam them in everywhere because everything looks like a nail, you know? And I've certainly been through that with various patterns, but over time you kind of graduate from that mentality and you start to be a bit more judicious with patterns. So it's been a while since I had that feeling of like, oh my goodness, I'm overusing this pattern. So I don't remember the last time it happened, but I definitely remember it happening a lot in the past. Dave says, PowerShell is nice as a scripting language, but I don't want to use it on the command line. Yeah, that has always been my feeling about structured shell programming languages as well, that they seem really cool for scripting, but it's just a lot of typing to do interactively. But maybe that's an okay price to pay, or maybe that's just a misunderstanding I have because I don't know about all the little shortcuts you can take. I really can't really speak too much on that because I haven't done the necessary immersion research. Let's see. Dave says bi-weekly is twice a week. Fortnightly is every 2 weeks. Sure. Well, so says you, but the dictionary disagrees, unfortunately. And I've definitely spoken with people who have differing interpretations of biweekly. But I think it would be really nice if everybody just agreed on something like this. Let's see. Ryder Hitchhike says, I'll try classes. That's a good trick. Coming in here with the prequel memes. All right, all right. Ali says, after using our shell for nearly a year now, I've realized that so long as your shell works well in interactive mode, everything else it can do is secondary. For example, sh is painful, but I honestly don't care whether I use zsh, bash, or fish. I think that's sort of how I feel in general as well. The quality of a shell, as far as I'm concerned, is all about how it feels to use interactively. And all the scripting things it can do, they at least they seem secondary. There would have to be some sort of radical new capability that to sort of convince me to sacrifice interactive ergonomics, I guess. But I feel like I'm like teetering on the edge of talking out of my ass here because I haven't tried these things enough. So I'm just not gonna start talking out of my ass. A. Lamau says, have you ever programmed in Haskell? And if so, what did you think about it? I have written less than 10 lines of Haskell, so I absolutely have no opinion about it that's worth hearing. So, and with that will be our last question for the day because I got to wrap it up. So this will be the end of SerenityOS office hours for Christmas Eve 2021. I want to thank everybody for coming and for all the lovely Merry Christmas messages and super chats and the awesome questions and just generally making this a very nice way to spend Christmas Eve afternoon. Thank you all so much for coming. And as I always like to say, if you end up hacking on Serenity in the weekend, then do come to our Discord server and talk about what you're doing so that we can share in the fun. Yeah, that's really it. So I'll see you all next time. Bye, and Merry